It's 7 a.m. on Saturday morning at the very busy Whitney Portal Trailhead. And we're getting to hike in up the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek and get ready to summit Mount Russell tomorrow morning. This is probably the second strictest place on food in the cars after Yosemite. Because of how popular this trailhead is, they do have an issue with bears getting habituated and sometimes breaking into cars. After Yosemite, this is probably the second strictest place on no food in the cars. We saw that this car got a warning. Just because they had a plastic tray in their back seat. This thing here, I wouldn't have thought that really looks like a food tray, but I guess they think even the bears might associate this type of thing with food. And with me this weekend is Matt Cry over on the right.
Hello.
Brian and Catalina on the left. Woo! This trip has been a highly anticipated one. I've actually been trying to get the permit for it for a couple years. It's a really highly impacted permit because the approach route, the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek, also goes to the Whitney Mountaineers route. So you have lots of people trying to do Whitney as well as Russell and Carilion, and it's booked up pretty much immediately every day. Finally got lucky this year, got on right at 7 a.m. and got lucky enough to get the spot. This is also the only area in California that I know of where they require wag bags. So you can't dig a hole for your poop, you literally poop in a bag and carry it out and throw it away at the trailhead. They used to have a toilet on the top of Mount Whitney, but they had to helicopter off 6,000 pounds of poop a year, and so they decided that was not sustainable. Now everyone carries out their own poop. The trail starts off pretty steep right out of the gate, but the first mile is shared between North Fork and the main Whitney Trail. So for the first mile, at least, we have really well-used, well-graded trail. Once we head off to the right up the North Fork, the trail will turn into more of a use trail. Still pretty heavily used though, so should be well marked with lots of ducks. This is the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek, and here's our turnoff onto our use trail.
That log is actually kind of stable. It's a little wobbly, but not bad.
Up ahead on the other side of this creek crossing is the part of the North Fork route called the Eversbakken Ledges, Eisenbacher Ledges, something like that. We just call them the E-Ledges for short. They should be well ducked. There is a route where you're basically walking back and forth across those little flat ledges, but it can be hazardous. Tragically, there was someone, a teacher actually, who fell on this route and died earlier this summer. They were starting the John Muir Trail from this trailhead, which is a really hard way to start the John Muir Trail. And not sure exactly what happened. They must have got off route or just slipped and fell. Really sad. And then there's been other cases, like I can think of one 2 or 3 years ago where it was early season, so there was still snow melting, and that can cause rockfall. And so someone was killed due to rockfall while on these ledges. Oh, you can see someone up there. There's someone who is up ahead of us. He's heading up to do the Whitney Mountaineer Trip. So Catalina, which trail do you like better so far? North Fork or Taboose Creek?
I think this one's prettier. I think harder, but it's not gonna be as long, so then the suffering is not gonna be as much.
That's only 3,000 feet.
Yeah, versus 60 something, 6,000. So, and look at that, that's so pretty.
I had forgotten how pretty this canyon was. It's been more than 10 years since the last time I was here, and we totally lucked out on conditions. Couldn't ask for any more perfect weather than this. Blue skies, 70 degrees, and no sign of the smoke from the Garnet Fire, which is sadly still burning over on the west side. We're taking a break here at Lower Boy Scout Lake, and then we're headed up on the left side of this creek up into the next basin, which should be Upper Boy Scout. There's at least 3 other parties up here with us at the lake. I think they're probably all doing the Mountaineers route on Mount Whitney tomorrow. But there's plenty of spots, so we were able to spread out. Everyone's being fairly quiet. And I was able to find this cozy spot in front of a protective tree. It does seem like it's going to be quite chilly tonight, so I'm very glad that I have my sleeping bag, the one that Matt found for me, out in the mountains several years ago. It's been freshly cleaned, super poofy, and should keep me really warm and cozy tonight before our early morning tomorrow. Home sweet home for the night. The wind really picked up in the middle of the night last night. I noticed my dreams started getting weirder, and then around 3 a.m. woke up to the wind flapping the tent quite a bit. So I just packed up my tent this morning rather than risk if the stakes would stay in on their own. But we are up and we're about to head up this canyon, which is our approach to the east ridge of Mount Russell. Light on the rocky peaks. Wind is still going pretty brutally though, so really hoping that eases off soon. The east ridge of Mount Russell is known as super solid, fun third class. However, that is once you get onto the east ridge proper. The approach is kind of sandy and tedious. As long as Matt is still holding his water bottle, it's probably not too serious. We'll see. Is there a point on this ridge where Matt puts the water bottle away? This is the Rockwell variation of the approach, and we're finding it a bit tricky route finding wise. Description mentioned heading up canyon until you hit a head wall, and then going up a sandy chute. So we went all the way up to this head wall thinking just around the corner there's going to be a sandy chute, right? And it is all cliffs. So we backtracked and we figure now that this is the best route up. I wouldn't really describe it as a sandy chute, more like a sandy route up the slope. So that sandy line up the slope was indeed the route. Now we're looking across at Mount Whitney and following a chute under the really impressive south face of Mount Russell. Heading up to the top of this chute here, which is going to be the saddle between Mount Russell and Mount Carilion. And unfortunately, that brutally cold wind has not slackened off yet. So I'm currently wearing my shirt, my fleece jacket, my puffy jacket, and my wind/rain jacket. And then on the bottoms I have long johns under my hiking pants. Doing all right, other than my lips are getting a little bit numb, so having a little bit trouble talking. This is Lake Tuleño with Tunabora Peak on the left side, and that middle one is unnamed, and then this is Carilion on the right side. Really beautiful color. And here's where stuff starts to get fun. It does look like Matt has put his water bottle away. So things must be getting serious. Thankfully the wind seems to have given us a break, or we're just shielded from it by the south face here. Humans are not the only creatures climbing Mount Russell, apparently. Always makes me happy when I see little critters up high on the mountaintops. Brian and Catalina, after crossing that last narrow section, decided that was where they're going to stop for today. The exposure was going to be a bit much for them, so total respect for kind of knowing your limit, and when you feel comfortable saying that's not going any further today. And so Matt and I are continuing on toward the summit. We just topped out on the east summit, and that ahead of us is the west summit, which is the true summit of Russell. We got one more little fun narrow section in between. Super stoked to be up here. That was a really fun route. It was a little bit different than what I was expecting. I had heard it was like sustained class 3, and I wouldn't really describe it that way. There were some class 3 moves, and then there was a lot of like class 2 walking with 1,000-foot exposure. So super fun to be on these narrow little ridges with tons of exposure, not too much actual climbing. In fact, where we left Whitney and Catalina, they might have already done the like Cruxy move. There's one other move that's a hard mantle that someone had left a hand line on, so that might technically be the crux, but that was less exposed. And so looking down where we came from, that is our lake, Upper Boy Scout, and then on the other side of the ridge is Whitesburg. So that's where you do the climbing routes on Mount Whitney from. Whitney. Some really pretty stuff over here. I should probably be able to pick out the Coia Ridge, but I'm not sure which one it is.
For the record, this is the Coia Ridge. Basically, look in the middle of the Sierra and look what's the most awesome looking thing.
And then looking north on the crest, we got Barnard, Trojan, and Williamson is probably the one that's furthest out toward the Owens Valley. So for example, here I'm walking on a flat 2-foot rock. Not exactly class 3, but off the side I have like a 1,000-foot drop or so. Here's that tricky mantle move where someone left a hand line. Meanwhile, the garnet fire is still burning away on the west side. We're taking the standard route on the way down, so it makes a little bit of a loop with the rocky variation that we came up. Word on the standard route is that it's more straightforward and a lot sandier, so it's harder on the way up because it's like 1 step up, 2 steps down kind of thing in the sand, but it should be easier on the way down because we can kind of slide down parts of it. And there's one more view back, Whitney on the left, Russell on the right, and you can see the start of the East Ridge on the right side of the skyline. this kind of sand, you can plunge your heel in, and it's pretty stable and goes pretty quickly downhill. Definitely would have been a lot more tedious on the uphill. We're happy to see that Catalina and Brian's tents are still there. They did not get blown away by the wind. After packing up camp and loading everything into our backpacks, including our own poop, because that's how we roll in Whitney Zone, we are ready to start the hike back down the canyon and back out to the cars.